heart-wrenching reveals on Paternity Court.
Mr. Benning, you are not the father.
What?
I wasn't with anybody else.
Obviously you were with someone else.
Jesus, Lord.
Benning versus Bodine. Most people would argue that domestic disputes should be kept private, but Judge Lake gives a voice to all who come to her paternity court. Today we see a young man on the stand anxious to find out if he's the biological father of the young girl he's grown to love over so many years.
The defendant cheated on you. This infidelity has caused questions regarding your 2-year-old daughter, Robin, and 6-month-old son, Jermaine Jr.'s paternity. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Benning has come to court to help end his emotional turmoil and get some peace. His partner, Miss Bodine, has zero doubt in her mind that Mr. Benning is the father of their children.
But for certain, he's the father. We was together while I got pregnant with Robin, and I know for certain he's the father.
Ever since he lost his beloved mother, Mr. Benning has been dreaming of one day having a daughter of his own.
Tough, Your Honor. My mother passed away when I was 14 years old. And after she died, it, left me hurt. I always wanted a daughter, and I promised I was going to take care of her and treat her like my mother took care of me.
Before delving further into the matter, Judge Lake expresses interest in the bond between Mr. Benning and the 2-year-old girl assumed to be his daughter.
Tell me about that relationship.
We are so close. She's goofy, she loves daddy. She's a daddy's baby. We love to play, chase each other around.
He couldn't believe his luck when his Miss Bodine became pregnant. He made a promise to stick by her side no matter what, until the final moment arrived.
Well, when she first came home and told me she was pregnant, I was excited, especially once we found out that it was a girl. That's something that I've always wanted.
As Miss Bodine was going through labor, an anonymous guy texted Mr. Benning claiming that his partner had been cheating and that he was not the father.
It actually happened during labor, Your Honor. I was in the hospital sitting across from Kayla as she was pushing this baby out, and I received a text from a guy telling me to leave the hospital because that's his baby and he needs to be there.
Although, even after receiving such a troubling message, Mr. Benning went on to sign the birth certificate and held his baby girl proudly. Additionally, Miss Bodine's evidence is sharp and decisive. She presents a paternity test to the court to make it clear that the anonymous person was in no way related to the child.
So you had a DNA test on the other guy already?
Yes, and he wasn't the father.
The results read that the probability of paternity between you and this other guy is 0%.
So why exactly is Mr. Benning so doubtful? The courtroom was left in awe when Mr. Benning exposed the shocking truth of Miss Bodine's infidelity with multiple partners.
You still have a doubt?
Yes, quite a few. First off, the DNA test doesn't mean anything concerning the fact that she's cheated on me with more than one person.
Oh.
There could be other guys out there, that's just one,
As this stunning revelation came to light, a barrage of spiteful jabs were directed at him in response. As it turns out, Mr. Benning had been bombarded with an onslaught of messages and calls, making it nearly impossible to believe anything she said.
There's a text message on my phone saying, "She's not yours." There's people calling me on my phone saying, "I'm her dad." It's constant. It's just constant, and
Well, this is why we're here to prove it.
after a certain time, you can't just ignore it anymore.
Despite Miss Bodine's admission of her unfaithful actions, she still stands firm in her belief that Mr. Benning is the father of both her 2-year-old daughter Robin and her 6-month-old son Jermaine Jr. She adamantly insists that those who dispute this are merely telling untruths.
I cannot control what other people say. I know what I'm saying and I know what I proved. So you have your doubt or not. I'm here to prove today that you're the father.
Because you are just 100% certain.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Despite spending 2 years raising his daughter Robin, Mr. Benning says he can't shake the thought of not being her father and even questions his newborn son. He can only imagine the heartache he would feel if either were true, and Judge Lake is determined to figure out the truth. Mr. Benning can be seen physically trembling in anticipation as Judge Lake prepares to announce the outcome. Do you think he's the father?
Mr. Benning, you are not the father.
The discovery that he is not the biological father of Robin has left Mr. Benning completely shattered. Yet his profound love for her has remained resolute, still seeing himself as her cherished parent. But what about Jermaine Jr.? Surely Miss Bodine has stopped cheating, right? Before getting to the results, Judge Lake wanted to commend Mr. Benning for his unwavering commitment to the kids and had some choice words for Miss Bodine. Judge Lake delivers her ruling. Is Mr. Benning the father of the precious child, Jermaine Jr.?
Is that the truth is
That he's
you
not.
are not his biological father.
Yes, Your Honor.
The findings are truly disheartening, uncovering that Mr. Benning was not the father of either of the children and no sorrow or apology from Miss Bodine. How would you react to such a dismal outcome? Curtis versus Buckley. Miss Curtis has alleged that her former fiancé abandoned her and their 22-month-old child, leaving them homeless.
You're here to prove to your ex-fiancé, Mr. Buckley, that he fathered your 22-month-old son, Xavier, because his denial has left you homeless and in need of help.
Yes, Your Honor.
Meanwhile, Mr. Buckley only wishes to confirm once and for all that he is not the biological father of the child.
Mr. Buckley, you say Miss Curtis is a cheater, and today the test will prove you are not the father. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
As Miss Curtis shares her backstory with the court, she breaks down because she knows how troubling it can be for a child to grow up without a father.
Well, Your Honor, I grew up with a father. I know how important it is to have a father in your life. And Mr. Buckley says it's very important for our child to grow up with a father. And so, with him being in and out of our lives and kicking us out,
Miss Curtis informs Judge Lake that Mr. Buckley has forcibly evicted her from his apartment, leaving her and her son Xavier homeless.
and kicking us, not only me, but his son out of his apartment. We landed in a homeless shelter.
I did not.
And I
That's
was not
true, Your
known
Honor.
as Champress Curtis. I was known as Resident 1625, sleeping in a twin-size bed with my son.
That's not true.
Sharing-
I did not kick her out.
Mr. Buckley tells the court that he had initially been willing to let Miss Curtis stay in his apartment out of the kindness of his heart. However, her behavior became increasingly aggressive once he began seeing someone else.
I allowed her to live in my apartment at that time. I was being nice to her. She got mad at me because I was with someone else. I didn't want a relationship with her. She told me she was gonna make my life a living hell while living in my apartment. And that's why I called my landlord. I was being nice to Mrs. Curtis.
Mr. Buckley candidly informs the court of his medical issues precluding him from starting a family of his own, painfully divulging that he'd not been able to conceive a child in any of his past relationships.
So you don't believe you can have children?
No, Your Honor.
Why?
Your Honor, I was in a relationship before and we tried to conceive a child. We went to fertility specialists and we were on medicine and kept up with ovulation dates and the whole nine, and it didn't happen.
When Miss Curtis told him about their pregnancy, he shook his head and simply asked her who the father was.
So what happens when Miss Curtis tells you, I'm pregnant?
Told her congratulations. Whose is it?
As Mr. Buckley aged, his longing for a child to call his own only intensified with each unsuccessful attempt to conceive. Consequently, he was for a time willing to accept Xavier as his son, despite not being certain of his biological paternity.
As the months continued to go along, I continued to get older and I wanted a child. I accepted Xavier as my child, even though I don't think I can have kids.
Judge Lake is particularly interested in learning more about the fateful day baby Xavier was brought into this world.
Take me to the day you gave birth, Miss Curtis.
I was in labor for 13 and a half hours. Mr. Buckley was with me for the whole 13 and a half hours. And when I woke up and they wheeled me by the nursery to see him, Mr. Buckley was standing there with tears running down his face. That's a couple hours him standing there just looking at our beautiful son.
No matter how deeply Mr. Buckley cares for this little one, the reality of Xavier being his son still seems impossibly far away to him. As the estranged couple continue to fight over the paternity claims, Mr. Buckley is prepared to present a witness who can prove that Miss Curtis had ongoing relationships with multiple men. Miss Curtis's neighbor, Annika Bunch, comes to the stand, revealing how he saw men come and leave all the time during the time of Miss Curtis's alleged conception.
And as you can see,
true.
I can see everything. We were friends. We've been friends. I told her, I see you. When we found out she was pregnant, she had a boyfriend. He passed away. They were together. And mind you, there were other men.
The mountain of evidence, charts and all seemingly left Miss Curtis feeling rattled, but she persisted in talking about her labor experience and how, against all the supposed odds, Mr. Buckley signed the birth certificate anyway.
Are you currently paying child support?
I'm on
No, he
child
quit his
support.
job so he wouldn't have to.
I'm working right now. I'm missing out on
Just
work right
started.
now. I just started back.
All right, so here on the birth certificate, father's name, Xavier Buckley.
Yes, Your Honor.
That's you.
Correct.
You signed it voluntarily.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Buckley is determined to set the record straight and tells the court how he can't let go of the strong connection he has with the baby. But Miss Curtis fights back, claiming that he refuses to pay any child support.
And is there a child support order?
Yes, Your Honor.
There is.
Yes.
Are you current on your child support, sir?
No, he's
Your Honor.
$3,000 behind.
The couple continue to argue as Judge Lake tries to get hold of the situation. She tells Mr. Buckley that no matter what the results are, he's still legally bound to this child.
Did you understand that because you signed that birth certificate, you would be legally obligated to provide support for this child?
Yes, Your Honor. My family made me well aware of that, and my entire family begged me not to sign it.
Judge Lake is concerned by the chaotic state of Mr. Buckley and Miss Curtis's relationship, but kindly reminds them that the primary focus of this court is to assist Xavier.
This is not about your relationship. It really is about Xavier, this child, and his paternity. That's it.
The results are finally in. Is Xavier Mr. Buckley's miracle child?
In the case of Curtis versus Buckley, when it comes to 22-month-old Xavier, it has been determined by this court, Mr. Buckley, you are not his father.
Baby.
The final results are absolutely devastating. Despite the evidence presented, Miss Curtis remains steadfast in her claims, leaving Judge Lake, the court, and Mr. Buckley agitated.
I wasn't with anybody else.
Obviously, you were with someone else.
Jesus, Lord.
As Mr. Buckley fights back tears, he promises to still care for Xavier, likely feeling that this was the closest he could come to having his own child.
Your Honor, I'm still willing to be in Xavier's life. The way he looks at me, the way he runs up to me. Now all the drama and extracurricular stuff can be cut short. I'm still willing to be in his life.